Honest Talk Radio. This is Elmo the Conservative, and this is a special episode. Sometimes we go outside of the usual social issues, politics, and news, and reach into something that's compelling that we think is going to be good for the country, good for people in general. And this is one of those days. I have with us on the show today Carrie Logan. She is a therapist and knows many different techniques for how people can get over trauma, get out of bad situations, to heal themselves, to deal with anxiety. She has gotten many awards and has been recognized in that community of mental health. And so, everybody, welcome Carrie to the show. Hello, Carrie. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing awesome, Elmo. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really truly appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. And you told me much about your background, and so if you could just summarize up
Yep.
in a couple minutes, so people can appreciate the the wealth of information in you that we have today.
So I have been a clinical certified hypnotherapist for over 20 years, and I have for the last 14 consecutive years been awarded the best hypnotherapist in my area. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm hoping this year I'll get the number 15. You know,
Yeah.
I coach people on a wide variety of areas, from toxic people to narcissism to attachment styles to trauma to human consciousness to communicating with difficult people to better understanding yourself, generational trauma, recognizing therapist abuse. The scope is even autism, and the scope is just very vast. And I work with people all over the globe, all different ages, and I'm really here to just help people live a better life. I'm an author, podcaster, blogger, got a website. I do lots. I do lots of things. Yeah,
And remind me, before the show is over, I want to mention the website and podcast
yeah,
where people can find you, because this is a door. We want people to not just observe from the outside, but to come through the door and then be connected with you. And
yeah.
you're a great kite to hold onto the tail, and you could take people far and to great places. Um, so, yeah, you mentioned narcissism, I believe, and so my first question for you, kind of a two-part, if you can combine just answering the question for how people may know if they're in a toxic relationship, and if they're with a narcissist, just kind of defining that, and how people would recognize it.
The best way to recognize it is you want to learn the keywords and the behavior traits. So I'll give you a really good example. A client that I was just working with today was talking about her grandson who's 14 years old and he's in jail. And when she told me his situation, I said, "Do you know that's reactive abuse?" And she was like, "What?" And I literally pulled up my presentation on reactive abuse and I read just the first few pages, and she was like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." And I said, "Yes, most people don't know what reactive abuse is." And I told her, that woman, she's dealing with someone, yes, that's narcissistic. I said, "You need to learn the definition of gaslighting, of plotting, collusion, baiting, projection. Um, was it where they just, there's a list. You can literally go online and there's a list of all the traits and behaviors of narcissistic, of you can look. So it's
And
really
then
important to know that. And why that's important and from a personal experience, is when I was speaking to a psychologist about my son's father, he did tell me, I think that he's narcissistic. And when I looked up the definition for narcissism, I was like, he doesn't meet the profile. He's not grandiose. He's he's shy, he's nerdy, he drives a violet Kia. I mean, I don't get it. So I dismissed it like most people do. And most
Yeah.
people don't realize there's at least, I think, 6 or 7 different types of narcissistic, traits out there, the key ones. And so when I looked into the key words and the behaviors, then it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is who I'm dealing with. Because I took all the behaviors personally. I was in the dark. I was wondering, why can't I communicate with them? Why are they acting this way? Why do they treat me this way? I had to educate myself on the patterns of love bombing, devaluing and discarding. And that those are the 3 patterns that they have. And not until I learned that there's different types of narcissist and what is a covert, then it was like, now I know how to deal with this person.
Let
Now I
me,
know how to relate, because
yeah.
they're not solution oriented. They're very into themselves. And the truth is, we humans create this people. They're not born that way. And
Let me interject and ask a question,
yeah,
because then I want to go into the love bombing, because you told me a little about that before. When you say reactive abuse, just to be clear to the audience, you're talking about the grandson who went into jail, or you're
yes,
talking about,
it was
okay,
because someone did something to him that made him snap.
okay,
And he went from his cortex brain, which doesn't fully develop until you're 25,
right,
all the way down into the limbic brain, which is the lizard brain, the survival brain. And he did something that was irrational. He tried to attack his abuser, and he got arrested and he's in jail for it. And when she told me what the person did to him, I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt so horrible for that 14-year-old boy. I
are
mean,
you able to talk about that here, as long as you don't mention the names? What
yeah, I
happened to
can
him?
I can talk about it, but the person, the whole family is toxic. I mean, it was very obvious, and it was the grandmother that actually came to see me and was talking to me. And her son is the one that's narcissistic, and he's so
Right.
abusive to his child. And she felt like that her grandson had Stockholm syndrome. And when she explained, something that happened, I said, yes, that's clearly Stockholm syndrome. And so at least she knew what that key phrase was, but she didn't know about, the projection. She didn't know about reactive abuse and what is mutual abuse. So mutual abuse is, we see it all the time. It would be where you have a friend and you're like, you're just stupid, where you're ugly, where you're dumb, where you're
To a
this, and you go
friend,
back and forth, but you're just messing with each other.
to a
That's
friend.
mutual abuse.
Hmm.
Reactive abuse is getting you so under your skin that you snap, and you're going to do something that you rationally would not have done.
Right.
So he never would have attacked his biological mom. He never would have attacked her. But he did, because she did something that was so severe. I guess I can share what it was. She's a tattoo artist. She literally tattooed a gang symbol on the sleeve of his arm and said, if anyone in town sees you, they won't mess with you because now you have this gang symbol on your arm. And he just, I mean, it's like she branded him. And what parent does that to a 14-year-old child?
Mm. Now, with the explanation that she gave, saying if anyone sees this, they're not going to mess with you. What is her rationale? What was her thinking that she was legitimately in her mind she was trying to protect him?
I think, yes, in her mind, she was trying to protect him. But the point is, you should explain it before you do it. Because once you
Sure.
do it, you can't take it back. And that was not
Yeah.
a responsible adult thing to do. She didn't ask him. And two, most parents don't go around tattooing their children.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and the thing about the whole scenario is she was out of his life for I think about 13 years. He was only with her for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 months, and she did that to him.
Yeah, there's a few things wrong with that.
Yes, there's a lot.
Like you said, no one underage is supposed to be getting a tattoo. Uh, Also, tattoo artists don't impress tattoos on people without their consent or permission, or hey, have a seat, and they put them to sleep, and then when they wake up, they have something, an indelible mark on their arm.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few things wrong with that. Um, well, let's go to uh, I guess focusing more on relationships. Men and women, or people that they're supposed to be romantically involved. They're supposed to love each other. So you could uh, talk about love bombing, and then also with the signs of a narcissist. I'm guessing this doesn't show up right away or right at the beginning, and it's kind of subversive until later on, maybe months later, or where they get their hooks in the person, and then it manifests itself. But you could just talk about that.
So you kind of froze there for a little bit, but I think I understand what the premise is. Is I'll start off with love bombing. Love bombing can be great because who doesn't like to be praised? Who doesn't like to be showered with gifts or taken out to a nice meal or feel like they're really being seen and appreciated and heard? Some of the signs that let's I mean for me a big red flag when someone says, "Oh my what's the key phrase? You're the most beautiful woman in the world."
Mm.
That's not, to me that's not true. There's many beautiful women out there in the world. Maybe in your eyes you're the most beautiful person, but it's deep in it's where they deeply infatuate you. But the big sign is when they try to start isolating you from your friends and your family. They want to spend all their time with you and they'll guilt trip you on that. Like, well, if you really loved me and you really cared about me, you'd spend more time with me than that person. And why they're doing.
No, we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to share something with you off the air, after the show. Just a couple things that you're hitting. It's like pin a tail on a donkey in the dark, and you're hitting it. So just going to share a couple things with you about that
Yeah.
I've experienced. But yeah, go on, go on.
Yeah. So it gets to the point where they start to, isolate you. And that's a form of manipulation. So they're really trying to separate you from your support system. That's a big important thing.
Yeah,
And you have to realize for a lot of people, we don't know what unconditional love is. A lot of us did not grow in an environment or a home where we were loved unconditionally. So when someone starts giving you ultimatums, that's a red flag. Okay.
yeah,
And when you start to question them on their behaviors and they don't like it, that's a red flag. You got to stop making excuses like saying, oh, maybe he had a hard day at work, or Maybe
Right.
she, is just on her period today and she's overly emotional. You got to take everything into consideration in the way that they talk to you and the way that they treat you. And that is part of devaluing. And it's what you call identity erosion. You start to
Oh.
lose your sense of self.
Like
And
the paint on a car just rusting and eroding away,
it's sort of
literally.
like that, or
Mm.
you start to develop anxiety, or you start to develop an insecurities. You start to
Right.
get more jealous, and they'll use that jealousy, as manipulation. They'll flirt with someone just to get a reaction out of you. And the thing is
Yeah,
a loving relationship, the person should respect each other and not
yeah.
be flirting with another person in front of you, trying
Oh,
to make you
absolutely.
jealous. You shouldn't.
Right.
And that's also devaluing. But
That's self-control.
when it gets to the discarding phase, it's where you're no longer hot. Oh, I want you. I want to, and sex is their big weapon too. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of them are good in bed. I'm just going to be honest. They
Yeah.
know how to use sex as a weapon. So when it gets to the discarding phase, you're not having sex anymore. You're walking
Right.
on ice, you're walking on eggshells. You're being given the silent treatment. It's like they're your drug dealer. The best way that I
Right.
described my a scenario is, think of them as a drug dealer, and they give you all the free drugs you want,
Up front.
and you feel so loved and so appreciated. Oh my God. And then you do something that makes them mad, and they cut you off, and
Right.
you're jonesing, and you'll
You're
do
hooked.
anything to get them back. You don't know what you did wrong, and you
Right.
didn't do anything wrong.
And they won't tell you.
They won't tell you. No. And you're suffering and you're hurting. And so you'll eventually give in because they got you so hooked on that drug.
Right.
And they've done
Question.
experiments on monkeys about this,
Oh, really?
It's just so sad.
Yeah, I learned in the last couple of years that chimps have like 98% of the same DNA as humans. So yeah, with that emulating in monkeys, I'm not surprised. This is a question. I'm kind of I have an analytical mind, and I observe things and try to figure stuff out, over time. So something that I would call a perfection complex, is that a part of or a subset of narcissism? And the way that I would describe it is uh, someone, they let's say they grew up where nothing they did was good enough, and they kept trying to outperform, and you get all A's and one B, and so they're chastised for the B instead of being praised for being up there, and so they take that out into the world, and so then everyone, whatever they do is not good enough, and so that's kind of the standard or requirement from other people is perfection. But because no one is perfect, they're not perfect, but they have to give the illusion of being perfect, so they can't admit when they're wrong. Because if I do that, then I'm admitting that I'm less than perfect. So is that a different thing, or is that a part of narcissism?
No, it is, because denial is their get out of jail card. I mean, and the hard part is they're trying to prove something to themselves and to the world. They feel like if they can be perfect in this area, then they will be accepted. They won't be rejected. They won't be abandoned, that they have value and worth, that they are good enough. So, really, what you're talking about is their core wounds. Their core wounds are coming out, and they think, if I do this, then it proves my value and my worth. but it what that person really needs to do is heal those core wounds that they have, because nobody is perfect, and it will cause you so much stress and heartache and frustration, and you could lose sleep over it. I mean, it can cause health issues, health problems,
Yeah, and
and then you'll have anger issues too.
sure. And there's a necessary thing about self-reflection and self-awareness, and people that they don't want to look in the mirror because of what they may see physically, or looking, inside, looking in internally, the proverbial mirror of the soul.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, I can't wash up in the dark. I need to see what's dirty so I can clean it up and know that there's no shame in being dirty. The shame is in not taking responsibility for it, you know. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, everyone is merely a mirror of you. So when we
Hmm.
get triggered by something, I mean, and this is going to sound quite profound. There was a moment where someone kept gaslighting me, and it really bothered me. And I talked to one of my therapist friends about it, and she said, "Carrie, how have you been gaslighting yourself lately?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "Whoa. Okay, you're right. Thank you for calling me out on it." And when I stopped and I went inside and I asked myself that question, it was where I was doubting myself. I was
Okay.
gaslighting me. I was doubting myself on, can you do this? You know, are you capable of doing this? And really, and honoring me, not, thinking less of me, but honoring that, no, this is who I am and I can do this.
Now, is that something that everyone does from time to time, is gaslight themselves, or was this kind of a question specifically for you because of your conversations with a friend?
No, sometimes we even gaslight ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the foundation for that is we need to make sure that we're being honest. Um, I need to know where I'm weak, because then I know where to put in more mortar between the bricks, or where I need to put reinforcements, or what I need to work on. I need to know it. And for me personally, the truth has to be the foundation of how I live and what I speak, and what I tell people and what I do. That is kind of that's the epicenter, and from there I can go out to wherever I'm going to travel, is from the truth, from the standpoint of the truth. And I'll get into a lot of arguments with people about politics, or my religion is Christianity. So you know I expect I expect a Muslim to live by the Quran, even if I don't believe in it or agree with it. You wouldn't be a very good Muslim if you didn't. So the people just need to understand that if I believe that is the truth, then I'm going to live by what it says. And that's kind of the purpose of religion, is so that we can be better people. That should be the main goal. And you have to, if you don't believe that it is the truth, then it's going to be very hard to follow it.
Yeah, but some
um,
people use religion as a crutch to manipulate and take advantage and control other people.
yeah. Yes. Yeah, some preachers do.
Yep. Well, even some spiritual people do.
Yeah, and that's wrong. Again, so as the truth, like with me hearing what you're saying and believing it and accepting it as truth, I just share it with people. I put it out there. Let me offer you something. You've been trying the same thing, or trying 5 or 6 different things to fix a certain problem, and it's not working. Let me offer you something new that maybe you haven't tried. but I don't want to control anyone's outcome. I'm not the kind of person where I'm calling somebody 3 times a week trying to get them to come to church. Now I'm gonna drive by your house on Sunday morning at 8:30 and blow the horn, and you better run out there, or I'm gonna keep coming back. No, I don't need to do that. I just need to offer it to them. And then as far as religion goes, people need to be the reflection of that. In other words, they shouldn't look at your behavior and go, wow, tell me the name of the church that you attend, because I want to make sure I never go there if they're cranking out people like you. You don't want to be like that. It should be, this is adding some value to my life, and I think that it would add some to yours also. And of course that is wrong. But so if you can give people like 2 or 3 key things about recognizing if they're in a toxic relationship, or is that just such a broad category that there's so many different colors in the palette that I don't want to make it hard for you to try to
No,
narrow down.
it is. There are, you can literally Google, what are the signs of a toxic relationship. There's blog posts out there, there's podcasts out there about, how to spot, are you in a toxic relationship? Is my partner toxic? And
Hmm.
I would honestly educate yourself and look into it, and be honest.
Right.
Really be honest with yourself, because when you and be gentle and kind to yourself, because
Yes.
when you start to learn the truth of what's really going on, it can devastate some people. It can
Hmm.
shock people, it can scare people, it can make people fearful. And
And
look at it is, it's better to know than be in the dark.
yes.
Now you got a flashlight on the situation. Now you know what to do. And
Right, but to not say, how could I be so stupid, and then just
you weren't
get
stupid, you were just uninformed.
right.
Give yourself grace.
Yes.
Give yourself grace, give yourself compassion, give yourself forgiveness, and look at it as, now I can learn the lesson I need to learn, because I was in the dark, I couldn't learn the lesson, but now
Right.
I everything is in front of me, and
Man,
now I
right.
have a choice, because before you didn't have a choice.
Yes.
Before you would be so reactive, you'd get so triggered. But once you have a choice and you know all the signs and traits and behaviors, you can now respond instead of react. You can disengage instead of engage. You can set healthy boundaries. You can learn tools of how to communicate with difficult people, because toxic people, narcissistic people aren't really solution oriented. So you should learn, the skills of how to communicate with the difficult people. And I know I've written stuff about that. You can, okay, I'm just going to come out here and say who I am.
Hmm.
I am Angela Meyer. I am the author of The Undetected Narcissist. For 3 years, I did a podcast on narcissism. And why I gave that name was, I was afraid. I didn't want to put my real name, on the book. But yes, I do have a podcast about communicating with difficult people, how to spot toxic people. I have a whole thing about reactive abuse. I have the shame response and shutdown. There's so much, and I even received an award for for all that information I put on there. I was like, holy cow, because it's all about helping people, because we create them. And if we don't like them, we got to stop creating them. And we
Yeah.
got to learn how we create them. And I actually tell you how you can create them, and they can change. I've literally when I've spoken public, I've had narcissist people come up to me and thank me
Hmm.
for talking to them. And they were like, you helped me understand my brain and how it works.
Right.
Thank you. And when you come from that place of love, light, and compassion, and you're giving everyone grace, even them that people don't like,
Right.
they thank you for that. That's a, I'm giving them a gift because I want everyone to live a better life. Not everybody, because they were
Yes.
made that way. And they
And that's
all have
commendable.
admitted, yeah, they all have admitted to me. They
Hmm.
feel and know when they are slipping from the cortex brain into the limbic brain. All of
Hmm.
them feel it. And so I
Yeah.
give them tools. I tell them this is what you can do to, when you feel that happening to you, you need to disengage. You need to step away. You need to tell the person, I'm getting really angry. I care about you. I don't want
Yes.
to hurt you. And I know I'm going to say something that I will never be able to take back. So I need to walk away
Yes. That's
and
great.
do it.
That's
You're
a
being an adult. You're
yes.
being responsible. You're not being abusive, and you're not allowing those wounds to come out and destroy a relationship, destroy someone's life.
And the person who they're speaking to, that other person, they should respect them so much for having the guts to say that.
Yes.
It's not easy, but it takes a big person to admit their fault, or to put down their own feelings, or how I need to win this battle right now in the next 10 seconds, and back up and look at the big picture, and to stop themselves and say, listen, I don't want to hurt you, or I don't need to get the last word in, whatever it may be,
Right.
is a very commendable thing. Can you talk about trauma bonding, and give a couple examples of that, as where people may recognize if they're engaged in that kind of situation?
Well, a really good example to give is, and there's a movie based on it, is the one It Ends With Us. So a good example of that
Okay.
movie, It Ends With Us, is she was a lovely woman, but she was in a really dysfunctional. Her home was not healthy. Okay, it was not healthy, and she witnessed domestic violence. Well, when you don't work on those issues and you meet somebody else, energetically, you're going to attract that same experience. And so she did. She met a man who was narcissistic. He flat out told her, I'm more into less than love. And and if you watch it, they ended up becoming friends. Yes, they ended up becoming friends, but when the honeymoon phase went over, he went back to his old ways,
Sure.
and he had core wounds and core trauma. She had unresolved trauma. He had unresolved trauma. Both of them did. And the trauma always comes up in a relationship. And so when she experienced domestic violence, it shocked the heck out of her. She was like, why is this happening to me? But honestly, there were warning signs there, and she made excuses, and she didn't listen to his words. She really didn't listen to his words. I mean,
Hmm.
you can like that person and be friends with that person, but you don't need to take it to the next step. And
Right.
she didn't explore more about, well, have you experienced any childhood trauma? So a good example is, let's say you come from a toxic home
Hmm.
and you meet someone and they are talking about toxic is their toxic parents or their toxic brother or whatever, and you can relate, and
Right.
in that relating, you're forming that trauma bonding friendship, that trauma bonding relationship. And the thing is you really should be asking that person, instead of like relating with them, is, well, what have you done to improve that relationship? Have you worked on communication skills? Do you know about this? And that's the hard
Hmm.
part, is the trauma always bubbles up to the surface.
Hmm.
It seriously does. Well, a good example too is the white knight syndrome. A lot of guys think, oh, I need to rescue this woman. I need to save this woman from this horrible experience. But then you get sucked into it, and she always has constant drama. There's constant drama, constant drama. That's a trauma bonding relationship. You're always trying to save her.
And would you say that the the person or maybe both people engaged in that bonding, that they are attracted to the trauma? And I guess what I
Yes.
really mean by that is, is it possible without them getting help where they could be with a person who has not been traumatized?
Yes. The thing, though, that a lot of people don't realize is about two-thirds of teenagers that are asked about trauma, two-thirds of them all say they've experienced it. And at
Okay.
least 70% of adults admit they did experience trauma. And so, and there are, I think, what, 17 different ways people can be traumatized. There's natural disasters like the fires that were down
Mhm.
in LA. And
Yes.
here's the thing, a lot of people don't know the difference between direct trauma and indirect trauma. So,
Go ahead,
direct
speak on
trauma
that.
is you get in a car accident. Indirect trauma is me witnessing your car accident and I have nightmares
Oh man.
and I'm scared to get in the car. Or let's say you got hit by a
Right.
truck, a big
Right.
semi truck. And every time now I see a semi truck, I'm afraid. I
Right.
start shaking
Sure.
and I want to pass it in my car. That's
Hmm.
trauma. And people
Yeah.
don't realize that simple thing is trauma. There's community violence, there's robberies, there's
Yeah.
the biggest
Right.
one is sports injuries.
Huh.
You know, you break your leg. You were an athlete. You thought you were, going to be a professional football player, and now your whole career is gone. That can be trauma.
Yeah. I witnessed a horrific car accident when I was about 20 years old, and I don't know now. I don't know if I was traumatized by it, and I may have been. Maybe if you witness it, then you are. But I just didn't. I was shaken up for like the rest of that day, and then I mean I've never forgotten it, and it involved just a car being broadsided by another because the traffic light wasn't working. So both directions had a green light, and happened so fast. A woman flew out of the car that was hit, and it happened so fast. I didn't see that. I just saw after the car had flipped over two or three times, the car was on top of the woman, like the side of it. The doors were, it was standing on the doors, and her legs were sticking out from underneath. And then some guys had to, get the car off of her. And I saw that from probably 30 to 40 feet away. And it's an horrific thing. So I don't know. Is it possible to see something like that
Yeah,
and
that
and
would
and not
traumatize
and not be
anybody.
traumatized? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, but the thing is we can we recover from trauma.
Hmm.
Okay, but where it gets really important is where, let's say in the future, you're afraid of that intersection.
Right. The
You're
the same the same intersection.
the
Hmm.
same intersection. You're afraid of the same intersection. Every time you see that make and model of and color of car, you
Right.
remember that. You remember that scenario. You see a woman that looks similar like her. You think of that body that was on the ground. You
Right.
can have nightmares. You can be kind of like on edge when you get in your car and you're driving in town or even being close by that intersection. You can still
Hmm.
recall, what happened. And all of that are signs of, you still have residual trauma.
Sure.
And the way, there's ways that you can clear that and get it, out, because it's it's important to because in that way you're kind of you're also stuck in your survival brain, because then now you're being hyper vigilant.
Right.
You know, you're on edge. You're kind of anticipating something's going to happen when something's not going to happen.
Hmm. Um, and you know, I knew that I knew that the show would be close to an hour today, just because you know there's so much good information. But so let's go to a third stage of this, and if you can talk about generational trauma, you know, give an example of that. Um, you know, how many generations something can be passed down, and how to clear it. You have some helpful ideas or information about how to clear that.
Yes, generational trauma is big. I actually, um, I really like this subject because it's where things line up. And just last week, and I don't even think the guy knew what he was talking about. So the author, um, there was some famous author that's written, sold over sold at least 100 million copies of his book. I think it was the guy that wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and he
Oh,
wrote some other
I read
books.
that. Hmm.
Yeah, sold several books. He was sharing that he had enough money, and he bought an island and was planning to do this health retreat on it. And the attorney really, I guess, screwed him over, and he lost millions of dollars, lost lots of money, and was actually glad he didn't
Bless you.
put that retreat on there. But then here's the kicker. I guess he did some research into his family history and found out his dad had a similar thing happen where he lost $3 million. Yeah,
Wow.
that's generational trauma because it was
So,
passed down.
right, in other words, this isn't something that he witnessed or experienced. This was something
Yes,
that was passed down hereditarily or
yes.
genetically.
I think
Right.
it's more energetically. So
Okay.
there's a really good book out there called "It Didn't Happen." It didn't start with you, and that's all about generational trauma and how things are leaked. So for me, in my family history, the generational trauma was narcissism. My grandfather, my great grandmother was a narcissist. Her son, my grandfather, was a narcissist. My mom married a narcissist man. My dad was a narcissist. Then I ended up having a child with a narcissistic person.
Okay.
Narcissism got
Yeah.
passed down. That's
Yeah.
generational trauma.
And it was the
Okay.
same. It was the same type. I mean, you
No, it
obviously
was
you know this.
different
There was different
types of
types.
narcissism, but that was passed down.
Okay.
The way that women beliefs about women was passed down.
Beliefs.
And so and I know how to clear it, and I know how to go in, and there's several other people. Um, there's a technique they call the recode that you can actually, it's kind of, and I know we're getting close on time, but there are ways where you can clear it, because I've done it for people, and I've done it in the areas of money, I've done it in the areas of health, I've done it in the areas of relationships, anxiety that can be passed down from generation to generation. You know, even stubbornness can be passed
Oh,
down from
oh, that's
generation
a
to
big one.
generation. And that stubbornness is unresolved issues. You are here to resolve those issues.
Right.
Okay. That's the key thing, is when you find out the patterns, that's the key word. You find out what the pattern is. Now you have your target. Now you can clear it. You clear it on your mom's side, you clear it on your dad's side, because we can store up to 7 generations of trauma in our DNA.
Wow.
We
Wow.
can.
And
Science has,
then
proven this stuff.
there was an example when we were talking on a previous day. You gave the example of one way that people can do a self healing or type of therapy. Can you give the example of the tree where someone would they would be thinking about approaching this tree, and so you kind of walk them through this scenario and experience where it ended up being a healing thing, having to do with trauma or really bad memory or experience. Can you give that example?
The example of the tree, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was like somebody goes to a tree that's out in the
Oh,
wilderness or in the meadow, and they go up to it and approach it, and then
okay. That's okay. So that was actually, that one was helping someone that had extreme anxiety.
okay.
And but they also did have, and there was that anxiety was passed down from generation to generation. Yes, his mom was such an anxiety person. Okay, so I had him visualize that he's out in the woods, and you're going to find a tree, and this tree you're really drawn to. It's a big majestic tree, and you're going to sit by the tree. And I used a metaphor story about the tree, how the tree it was just a seed, and it was determined to live. And so it broke out of the dirt, and it wanted to grow, and it had to learn how to stay calm. It had to learn how to stay grounded, and it had to learn how to dig in its roots and honor itself and value itself, because the wind is going to lie to you and want to knock you over. The rain is going to pound on you and try to wash you away. I used all the elements in nature, and I said, but this tree was so determined. I'm going to live. I'm going to survive. I can weather the storm. That's the key word I used for him. No matter what drama comes my way, I can weather the storm. I will put in my roots. I will stay grounded, balanced, and centered, and I will weather the storm. And this tree that's so majestic has now, when the wind yells at it and says, I'm going to blow you away, the tree just laughs, because it's so big and so strong and so confident and so joyful that it doesn't care what the wind has to say, because he's no longer afraid of the wind. He's no longer. And so I used it as a metaphor story for this guy that had just extreme anxiety. And I
Right.
mean, when I asked him, and that's the thing, a lot of us don't ask our parents, well, did you struggle with anxiety? Did grandma struggle with anxiety? And you have to think about what life was like for them back then. There was a great famine, there was
Yeah.
wars,
Right.
there was droughts,
Oh man, the
there was
depression.
recession, there was all that.
Right. Yeah, and then like you said, metaphor, and I'm visualizing the thing with the tree, and one of the things that I'm seeing, like you have the wind and the rain, but also the dirt. Like,
Yes,
make your roots strong. Like, dirt
yes,
is not really dirty. Don't run from it. It's actually good for you. It's rich and nutritional. So it may have bugs and worms in it, but that's your land. You like stake your claim, dig down in it. And so there's this stigma about dirt, but it's actually a good thing. Soil is a good thing, and um, things need that. Trees, plants need it to grow and
right. And
for
so,
them to anchor
yes,
themselves.
it was helping the person realize to not feel threatened or fear by the elements, like
Yes,
the dirt, like the wind, like the pounding rain, like the sun when it's dry in the summertime. It was
yes,
really letting them know that everything in our the universe has a purpose. Every element on this planet has a meaning and a purpose. And instead of fearing it, I can understand it. And when the storm comes, I can weather the storm.
Yes.
I don't have to be
Okay.
afraid that it's going to wash me away or it's going to flood me out, but realize it that, I am solid. I am strong. I can weather the storm because the storm's going to pass. I mean, when
Yes.
you think about a tornado, in the center of that tornado, it is calm. It is peaceful,
Hmm.
and look at it is that can be you. You can be in the eye of the tornado and you can have all this chaos going around you, but you are grounded. You are centered. You are balanced. You're going to be okay. You can weather the storm. The storm is only temporary.
And
Only
it's
temporary.
always it's
It's
always
always
moving.
temporary. Everything in life is always changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the world itself is turning.
Yes. And so just realize that because all you can do is take one day at a time. One day at a time. You can't change the past. You can't, you know, you're not in the future yet. Your
Yeah.
place of power is right now in this moment.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carrie. And I would like you to give the audience a couple of places where they can find you. If you could mention a website, podcast,
Yeah.
and like you made references to a couple books. If there's anything that you want to give them, some good links or good material that's aligned with what you're talking about. I just want you to take a couple minutes and do that now.
Thank you. So since I came out and revealed, the Angela Meyer part, that is the undetected narcissist. There is a website, the undetected narcissist. There's the book, there's the podcast. There's so much information if you want to know about narcissism, toxic people, fear of dating another narcissist. I did a 3-part series about that. There, like how to handle a narcissist during the holidays. I put that
Sure.
in there too. And so I did that for 3 years. And then I switched over to Master the Upper Rooms. And
Oh,
that is all about learning about human consciousness and learning about how to understand yourself, how to read other people, how to clear the generational trauma. It's all designed to educate and inform people. So on Master the Upper Rooms, there is a link called Free Stuff. There's a bunch of free things on there, free images, free ebooks, free audios.
great.
Also on the undetected narcissists under resources, there's free stuff on there as
Great.
well. And I always do a free 15-minute consultation with people. I can do it over the Zoom, I can do it over the phone. But I like to see, am I a good match for you? Can I help you?
Right.
And because my coaching style is, you're at point A and you want to get to point B. I want to
Yes.
help you get there the quickest, way. And I want to find out, is it something that is internally or externally? So internal
Hmm.
is thoughts you think about yourself, sabotage, procrastination, or is it a narcissistic person you're dealing with? You're, a boss, a coworker, a family member. I try to find out what's blocking you from achieving your goals. And
Yes.
I'm very good at that. I got a YouTube channel, and anyone can Google my name. It's spelled Kerie, last name Logan. And yeah, I got another website called Empowered Within. That was the first one I actually started. There's tons of free stuff on there too. So there's lots
Empowerwithin.com.
of resources, out there for people, and it's all designed to educate, but also make the world a better place. Because when you're in the dark, it's not fun. We take everything personal, and it's frustrating. It's really
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah, we need to evolve. There was a time when
Yeah.
people were primal, and 100,000 years ago, to survive, that we had to be untrusting and put these walls up, and everything was very defensive and aggressive. And so we need to evolve past that, and
Yep.
think
So
about things.
40 human consciousness is courage, neutrality, optimism, forgiveness, understanding. Because we've all
Yeah,
met people, that's maturity. Because we've all met
yeah,
people that are mature physically in their body, but
right.
immature in their brain.
Yeah, and that unforgiveness, that thing is just a tether that just holds people down. And it's strange that they don't think about what it's doing to them, and that there's, where everyone else seems to be soaring and have helium and going up high, but you have this thing that's just holding you down, because they're thinking about the grudge they have against the person or people that they're being unforgiving toward, and not seeing what it's doing to themselves.
Yeah, but
So
then that person's living rent free in your mind, wreaking
mm,
havoc. That person doesn't care about you. They've moved on.
yes,
And that's why forgiveness is for you. You're not
yes,
forgiving the horrible things they did to you.
right.
You're forgiving what happened to you, because that's the you if you don't learn the lesson from that person, it's going to keep repeating it until you learn it.
And you can forgive a person and completely remove them from your life. So
Yep.
it is not an open door license for abuse, which is a misconception that a lot of people have about it. It is for you. Most of the people that I have forgiven, I never told them that I forgave them. I
Yep.
just made a decision in the way I thought about it, because I have to be free. And like you said, that this is to help other people, and I want everyone to be free, and everyone that does become free, that was in the dark, when they get that light, that can show others, that can show other people and light their way. So
Right.
yeah, really, really good stuff and information. I know that I want to have you back on the show at least one or two more times, just to just to
Yeah.
cover some other things, because you have so much. So
I do. I will admit that. I do,
mhm,
but life has been a great teacher for me, and and the book that I wrote, The Undetected Narcissist, why I wrote it was I couldn't find anyone that told their story of
mhm,
their experience with someone narcissistic. And I wrote it coming from a place of wisdom, understanding, and love. And
mhm.
I did not write it coming from a place of hate, anger, and fear, because there's too
Yes,
much of that going around. I wanted people to understand the way they work, the way they think, the things that they do, so then people don't get hurt again. Because I got
yeah,
hurt, my son got
yes,
hurt, and I don't want that to happen, because literally I found out what I experienced is a crime. In other countries, it's a crime.
mm,
And because my son has autism, and he was able to convince the judge that if our autistic son lived with him, all his behaviors would go away. And they believed it because no one knew about masking. So he was
mm,
so afraid of his dad, he would be on his best behavior and pretend that everything was fine, but then
mhm.
come home and fall apart.
Right,
He would act out at school. And everyone thought, oh my God, what's going on? But it wasn't me, it was
mhm,
masking.
right,
Yeah. And so it was unfortunate because I did lose custody for about 8 months. But then when he came back home, he admitted to the judge that he damaged this child,
hmm,
and he traumatized him, and it was so unfortunate. And I can't reverse it, I can't do any
right,
of that. But it's like, no, people need to know this stuff.
yeah,
I wish I would have known at the time what masking was. I didn't know, so I was in the dark, and I
yes,
had to forgive myself because I felt like I couldn't fully protect this kid because I wasn't educated enough.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Thank you
You're welcome.
for taking the time out of your day to be on this show. I know this is life changing stuff. And people just hearing something or attending any class is not enough. The real work happens when you leave the class. It's when you walk out and put into practice what you learn. That's kind of the point in the Matrix with the red pill and the blue pill. Those were placebos. And we
Yeah.
hear about people being red pilled now. It had no power in it. It was them going through the physical action of taking a step. Where it's like I wanna know the truth, even though the truth is painful, it's reality. And so we have to take the red pill if we want anything to change. Because if we go back to the way things were or just go to sleep, you're guaranteed one thing. When you wake up tomorrow, things are going to be the same, and those problems will still take up residence with you.
Yep.
So this has been another episode of Brutally Honest Talk Radio. Thank you everybody for your time. You can follow us on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, we are on YouTube, Amazon, iTunes, and now really blowing up on TikTok. I want to thank and welcome and embrace the TikTok community and keep on sharing our videos so that we can get out and people can know about our content. So everybody, take care, be good to yourself, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye.
All right, and I just hit the stop button on the recording. So
Okay.